I think one of the things that's interesting is this reclaiming of self, that the aspect of medicine that returns us to the truth of who we are. There's like no way but through that shadow. So many people talk about medicine as a reclaiming, a remembering of the deeper, truer nature of who they are. And it doesn't even matter what your spiritual orientation is. It can be, it's all energy, it's all love, it's all one. It can be a deep Christian mysticism. It doesn't matter. It can be whatever faith tradition you come from. It does begin in my own experience of peeling back the layers of traditional religion, but that's just been my own experience. So what is spirituality?
Today's guest is Michaela Carlin. Michaela is the host of the Psychedelic Mom Podcast, a certified optimized coach and psychedelic integration coach. She holds certifications in Reiki, breathwork, fitness, transcendental meditation, and is a certified facilitator in the intersectionality of spirituality and social justice. Go to thepsychedelicmom.com to access her podcast, join a retreat waitlist, and more. You're listening to Psilocybin Says. To support it, join the conversation in the YouTube comments, subscribe on YouTube and podcasts, and stay connected on Instagram and TikTok. And now, please welcome Michaela Carlin.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Psilocybin Says. I am your host today, Courtney Rose, and I have the honor and privilege in having a conversation with Michaela Carlin today. Michaela is a mother of four, an entrepreneur, and the host of the Psychedelic Mom Podcast. She's also a healer and facilitator of earth medicine ceremonies, conversations, and retreats. Welcome, Michaela. Thank you for being here on Psilocybin Says.
Oh, thank you, Courtney. I'm so happy to be here. It's so interesting. I was just saying it's hard to be on this side. Like, I want to know so much about you. I'm like really excited to be with you. So
yeah,
maybe this is a two-way conversation.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. I'm so looking forward to diving in as a fellow mom and psychedelic practitioner. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about your journey with psychedelics. How were you introduced to psychedelics?
Well, it was prior to this psychedelic renaissance. So, it wasn't a time where there was a lot of information. It was kind of like right on the trending edge of the psychedelic renaissance. So I was never somebody who experienced psychedelics young. I grew up in the just say no to drug era, and it worked brilliantly. And, but I always was somebody very really curious human being, always reading different philosophies, curious about different religious ideologies, Buddhism, Taoism. I grew up Catholic, but always at a really young age wanted more information about this reality, the big existential questions of life, like who are we? What the heck are we doing in this world? What is quantum physics? Like, all these deep questions. And so I was kind of a self-seeker and a deep meditator starting early in my 20s. Again, meditation was kind of a weird thing in my circles as a mother and Western woman who was very traditional in my roles. And then at some point, I started doing some research because I had a daughter who was struggling in high school with some depression and anxiety. And I was like really questioning the Western model of mental health. And again, there wasn't that much information at the time, but I came across like one article at the bottom of the internet. Like down this huge mama rabbit hole, like what are the options? I had never experienced depression. I wasn't somebody familiar with anxiety or depression.
Mhm.
So I just didn't know how to support her. So I really was trying to figure out the best way. And I did come across an article about the use of psilocybin for anxiety and depression and some new studies that were coming out. But I kind of wasn't ready to use my daughter, who was 15 at the
Mhm.
time, as a psychedelic experiment, a
Mhm.
family
Mhm.
project. So
Mhm.
I kind of let it go and took traditional routes with her. But there was this like magnetic pull that to this day, I can't really understand. It was like the curiosity for
Mhm.
earth medicines sucked me in so deep. And I started reading anything I could about ayahuasca and psilocybin mushrooms and the history. Um, and then finally, one day, I still had this deep question of, could these medicines give me access to parts of myself that my conscious mind doesn't have, and access to realms beyond what my kind of mystical experiences and meditation had provided me with. And I was also at this kind of turning point in my life. My kids were getting a little bit older. I had been a mother, mostly, these side little entrepreneurial projects, but mostly I was a mom and supported these 4 children in their life. And each of them had, different challenges, whether it was like dyslexia or my daughter when she went through her struggle. So all of a sudden there I was like, what now?
Mhm.
Who am I? And it took me about 2 years. I actually thought ayahuasca was going to be my first medicine. And everybody kept saying, when you're ready, the medicine will show up. And I was like, oh, nothing is showing.
Mhm.
And I finally came upon 2 people and felt really comfortable. One was a man, one was a woman. And last minute, I was like, no, I really want to go to a woman. And ended up jumping on a plane and having an incredibly profound experience. I don't think it's a typical first experience. I just want to lay
Mhm.
that out there because it was a layered 3 medicine journey, um, which was MDMA,
Mhm.
psilocybin, and toad medicine. So this was like 0 to 1,000, and that radically changed my life in so many ways. As you know, when you first have a earth medicine experience, um, the integration is the biggest piece. There's what you're shown in the journey, and then the layers just start coming down. The
Mhm.
layers of all that you've built up of who you think you are start
Mhm.
to come down. And so that was how I got in initially to this space.
Mm. Wow. Well, first, let me say you are brave. Um, hearing as a mom myself, raising little kids is so hard, as any mother or involved parent really very well knows. And hearing you say, mention this journey with your daughter and trying to find a solution, for one, that's hard enough
Mhm.
to just go with a traditional, or the Western route.
Mhm.
That's the easiest thing to find and work with. But then to continue to search,
Mhm.
um, it just can require so much energy and thoughtfulness. So,
Yeah.
um,
I want to say too, for anybody out there, like I have a friend right now who has younger kids and one of them is struggling. My heart goes out to you and you're not alone. Back when my daughter was struggling, we didn't even talk about this stuff. Like
mhm,
nobody talked about it if their child was
mhm,
anxious. This is Luckily we're moving into space where it's safe to say what's actually happening in your life a little bit more so than when this was going on. And it's so hard as a mother. I just remember thinking the oxygen had left the house. Like honestly felt I was also a believer that I needed to fix it. I was the one. Who else was going to? And had to come up with all these solutions and was actually willing to do anything. I even homeschooled for a semester because I thought that could help, and spend some time, in wilderness with her. And, it was not an easy path. And I'm so grateful for the model that we did end up using. 'Cause she's amazing today. And she actually works with kids that struggle today with autism, and is a therapist, a recreational therapist. So so incredibly amazing. At the time, if you told me we'd be here, I would never believe it.
Yeah.
So yeah, my heart goes out to parents who are raising kids today. It's a challenge.
Yeah, that's huge. Thank you for acknowledging that. That feels, validating for me, for sure. My little kids are, not to the point of the social media use and all that crazy stuff. But yeah, it is a lot of energy. And so thank you for acknowledging that directly for all of the parents. So, and another beautiful and surprising for me aspect with parenting is the personal healing and transformation that comes, that our kids can so often facilitate. So hearing you, have this opening up, looking for a solution for your daughter, and then you end up having this transformative experience. And I haven't heard a whole lot about that kind of 3-layered approach. And I'm very curious to hear more about that experience. If you'd be open to talk a little bit more about it.
Sure. Yeah. It's a powerful way to go. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for a first-time person. And I trust the medicine and know in some ways it's exactly what I needed. And going back, there wasn't even that much conversation in the Western model of generational trauma, I didn't have any language around any of this. So I wasn't going in for healing in a way. I was going in for deep curiosity. And medicine always gives you what you need. So I would say that the experience was a Kundalini awakening. The energies in the body, it was so multi-dimensional. As you know, working with psilocybin can take you to places. For me, psilocybin has always taken me to the shadow, the underbelly of myself. And MDMA just softens that a little bit. So there's this deep empathogenic way that MDMA has of first bringing on love and deep compassion for oneself, and a heart opening to even go to places that may be unfamiliar territory for us. I wasn't familiar with what shadow even was. I had really very idyllic childhood from what all my memories showed me and ideas of life were. So I didn't really know what shadow was. And then the toad medicine was really interesting. Toad is such a profound medicine. Have you experienced toad?
Not yet.
Or Bufo or 5-MeO-DMT. It's so unique. It's such an energetic medicine. So my first experience with this medicine was what some would call a whiteout, which is you don't really remember the journey. But what was very interesting about it was the medicine woman said to me after, wow, did you know you had so much rage? And I was absolutely shocked. I said, rage? Me? What? No. And she said, yes, actually, when I was, when I got the toad medicine, I guess I was really moving a lot of repressed anger and rage that I didn't even know I had. So from my perspective, what Toad did from my awareness, so that was happening kind of without my awareness. My awareness of Toad was, wow, such a beautiful, profound falling into or becoming oneness. The pure oneness of our beings, falling into and remembering the true nature of who we are and being in that for hours. And while I was in that, being shown things like this medicine was asking me to see myself as the oneness saw me. And I was like, I don't even know what you're even asking me for. Just like the patience of the medicine, and the medicine showing me this lineage of medicine women that I came from, which I didn't even really know. I had heard that I had my grandmother was a pharmacist, her mother was a pharmacist, my grandfather was a pharmacist, when they really did the, medicines themselves. And so it was showing me this long line beyond even those family members that had been medicine women. And it showed me this path. And I was like, wrong girl. I'm just here because I'm curious. And, just kind of, that was my opening to a deeper. So the question going in was, can these medicines give me access to parts of myself that I didn't have? And it did that in two ways. It opened up a very small window of realization that there was something I needed to go into, some shadow. And then it opened up on the other end, just the deep connection to what true nature is and what my purpose was.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for taking us on that journey. I got chills all through my body several times as you described that experience. Wow. So you found these medicine people. Well, you worked with a medicine woman, you mentioned, and this was totally new to you at the time, just for curiosity purposes. Wink, wink.
Right.
And you mentioned having this more traditional role and being a more full-time mom. Did anyone know that you were going on this specific journey?
That is such a good question. Because that really gets into who I was then and who I am today. Who I was then, which I didn't even know, was someone who was very codependent, who really wanted everybody else to be comfortable and happy. And I learned at a really young age, probably pre-verbal, to tap into the energy field of my home and know what kept other people happy. How was I going to get the love? How was I going to get the attention and the approval? And that really became a mechanism for who I became in my life without really having a deep understanding of that. So when I was really curious about medicine, I knew that wasn't going to be something within my family dynamic with my husband and life that would have been understood. And so, no, I think I said I was going to study mushrooms. And when the question got asked, what do you even mean? I said, oh, well, mushrooms have been used for centuries for many faith traditions, for deeper levels of spirituality, and I want to go study that. So I wasn't honest, and could really feel the tension of that in my being. Could really feel the ways in which I was suppressing what truth was for me, for somebody else's comfortability, and my comfortability of sitting with someone else's discomfort. So I actually had an experience with iboga about a year later. And maybe it was 2, I don't remember, and I had this real moment with iboga, which is known as if your audience doesn't know, iboga is from Gabon, Africa, and it's a root bark medicine, and it is a powerful medicine. And as much as bufo or 5-MeO-DMT is the light at the top of, like, say, a Christmas tree or a tree, bufo is the absolute root of that tree. It's known as like grandfather medicine, and the Bwiti, who have been the keepers of this medicine from the beginning of time, their favorite word is basi basi, and it means truth. And to them, truth is the foundation for life. So I had an experience with iboga, and everybody around me is purging. It was my first group medicine journey. I was always doing kind of like one-on-one with medicine, and then one-on-one with myself, apprenticing with mushrooms on my own and things like that. But this is my first group journey, and I'm hearing the Bwiti music, which is really intense music, and people purging. And I'm sitting so politely with my little blanket and my, mask on, not moving, really uncomfortable. But even the way I kind of held myself together was something I was really used to doing, was just like, you don't need to, like, make noise, ask for help. I think at one point I even asked for melatonin because I wanted to sleep. I was like, this is too intense. Can I have a little melatonin? And then didn't purge, wasn't comfortable. It was a week-long journey, so there was going to be another journey after this. But the next morning I got up, and again, I was kind of in this tension between, so maybe it was a little less than a year after my first journey, of saying what was true. Like, I want to do this medicine now. It's like really calling me. It's really calling me to do deep healing, but I'm not in a place within my social familial structure where anybody would think this is okay. And again, you're going back before. Now it's on CNN. You open up any newspaper, and psychedelics is now a big topic. But this is when it was like, you would have been considered absolutely out of your mind and crazy. Yeah. So I was calling home and checking in with the medicine woman who doesn't want me to be checking in at home. She's like, take the time. I'm trying to please her. I'm feeling pressure to please her. I'm feeling pressure to please home. And I'm like, who am I? Like, who am I? And I went into the bathroom, and looked myself in the mirror. And I heard this, like, clear as day grandfather voice. Some people call iboga grandfather. If you are not aligned to truth and authentic, who are you? And you can't do this work. It was preparing me for this path. And I started purging for 2 hours. And people are like, sometimes when people come for medicine, they'll say, I don't want to purge. And I'm like, oh, they don't know the gift of the purge. And when I was purging, I knew everything I was purging, the toxicity of ways of being, the toxicity within relationships that weren't able to be authentic. It was just a deep return to an understanding that this way of being wasn't serving me or anybody else. It was a deep lesson.
Wow. Yeah, it is. I used to get frustrated when people would ask, years ago, when we were doing the retreats in Jamaica, how do I, make sure I don't have a bad trip? And I'd just be like, oh, seriously? But now, I can kind of smile and laugh, a little bit more with it. Because yes, as long as we're in a safe and supported space with trustworthy people, the challenges are such a gift to be able to work through in the medicine space.
Yes. And when you're breaking through conditioning, again, like cultural, social, political, economic conditioning. And then you have such profound medicine journeys. It can be really untethering. It can kind of be like, well, who am I? This is who I thought I was. This is what the world has always expected of me.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when someone says they don't want a bad trip, I'm like, what do they? Yeah, it's interesting because medicine is always going to give you what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you bring up such a good point there. It can feel and be very untethering and intense to come home to a whole new perspective amidst patterns, the old patterns that were pre-medicine. Yep. And all the relationships where we have these momentums going of patterns, and it's a lot to work through.
Yeah.
So, and I really appreciate also how you're speaking about working with, when you're speaking about the voice of grandfather Iboga, and speaking talking as if, as it is, a being, a spirit. And I really appreciate that. It's a nice reminder for us in this psychedelic renaissance time that the power of acknowledging the relationship and working with these spirits can
such
be
an important,
so helpful.
Yeah, such an important message for our Western culture that is so ready to take a magic pill and have it be really easy and whisk away your anxiety and I don't mean to say that that's easy because it's not when you have anxiety or depression or anything. And to our Western model in some ways is a beautiful model. It certainly supports us in so many ways. Excuse me. But I am really concerned about the Western model being superimposed on the earth medicine space, because these medicines and the peoples that have kept these medicines for centuries safe, they're at the core of their whole cultures. It's a very different model than going into a therapy office and putting on a mask for a couple hours and not having the integration. That, by the way, that model really works too. So I'm not downplaying the model of using these medicines in a therapeutic approach. I think it's going to help humanity on so many levels. It's just the reminder, though, that I think of tobacco, and tobacco is such a beautiful medicine used from the beginning of time. And when the Western model commodified it and westernized it, it became closer to a poison. And these plants have an intelligence, whether we understand it or not, they do. And I don't know how many clients I've served and experienced myself that they'll say, how did the medicine know to go right there? To a memory I didn't even know I had, to they just have an intelligence that we don't understand. And I do think we have to honor that there's a mystery here. There's a deep mystery that and the people that have really kept these mysteries and lineages alive and these medicines alive and sharing them now with the world. It's just really important to remember our Western model doesn't have it all figured out.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, it's important. And it's so much more rewarding if we're looking for, the real rich experience. That's it. Really honoring the existence and journey of the medicine in itself and the spirit of the medicine and all of the keepers. of the medicine. Indeed. So I would like to hear more, going back to your story, with you had this 3-layer first experience with the MDMA and the psilocybin and the toad medicine. And then, like, within a relatively short span of time, it sounds like you were still practicing with the mushroom personally and with some other space holders before you did iboga.
Yeah, I did that 3-layered thing, that 3 or 4 times.
Okay.
I went in deep to medicine for a few years, like really deep into, again, I have no explanation for it. Can't explain why there was such a pull, other than now, sitting where I am,
Yeah.
a deep understanding that I had healing to do, that I was also part of some generational trauma healing, and that this would be a path for my own learning of how to intuit healing for others and help others heal. It's like, it was like I had to go through it myself first. It's really interesting. I took the Being True to You program, which is a psychedelic integration program in the area of addiction and psychospirituality. And, you know, it's so interesting. It's a very in-depth program. At the time, Dr. Dan Engel was the teacher, and Deanne Adamson was running it. She still is. I think Dr. Dan's still a teacher. And when I signed up again, I would do these things. I like, oh, this sounds interesting. I'll sign up. And no idea the level of intensity of this course and the layers, and thinking that I'm doing this because I want to be a psychedelic integration coach. And one day just having this like profound moment of like, oh, Being True to You. What a great title. Because now I'm in the midst of my own. Where am I true? Who am I? How am I true to myself? How am I not? Where is my sovereignty? What is my voice? And it's just, medicine has this way of just also a lot of humor. So I was taking more medicine. I was studying the medicine. I was apprenticing to do medicine work, studying psychedelic integration work, apprenticing with different medicine women. But honestly, it was my own deep work that really is the teacher. And the medicines themselves. And, well, that's not true. Okay. All right. I have to go back.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. It's the medicine, the deep healing work, and incredibly held space and teachers that have gone deep in their own healing, because you can only take someone as deep as you've gone. And I was incredibly lucky to end up in the hands of some of the most beautiful teachers who really taught me a lot about myself.
That's awesome. That is such a gift to have people in your path so early on as well. That's such a deep dive that you took, going from, not really, I think you mentioned not really having this concept of shadow, or thinking you had a shadow, looking back on your upbringing, to
No, I was actually very good at like using my meditation practice to just find this state of constant peace. So in a lot of ways, I remember my first journey, the medicine woman said to me, the mushroom came on, and I told her that I didn't like the music and I wanted her to change the music. And she said, what do you like about it? And I could tell it was bringing me to some darker material. And I sat up and I said, I just don't like it. It's dark. And I took my eye mask off and I said, oh my God, look how gorgeous it is out. It was just like a gorgeous day. And she was like, I think you might want to put the mask back on. And I was like, I don't think so. And she prompted me to, and I went back in, I sat back up, I was listening to the music, and I was like, yeah, I don't like the music. I want it to change. And I asked her to put on this different song, which she did. And then that music came back on, and I started to realize, oh, I'm the music. I'm the music. And there's something about me that needs to change. And it was a deep moment of realizing what spiritual bypassing was. And she kind of encouraged me to go back in and go into and lean into what the medicine was bringing me to. Yeah. So for anybody out there who hears these stories about medicine and the shadow, and it's like, now they're kind of memes, like, have you done your shadow work? And, have you had a dark night of the soul? It's for real. Like, I totally understand the discomfort of going into the shadow, because it's not really you as your adult self. It's the physiology and visceral experiences stored in your body from a child. So it's like, shadow work might not sound scary, but what you're doing is you're actually re-entering your child's body, your child's fear, discomfort, so that you can reintegrate it, feel the emotions never felt, process whatever needs to get processed, see and witness that child with your adult body. But it's actually re-entering the state of the child's physiology.
Yeah. I really appreciate you bringing that up and talking about the shadow aspect of things. And, this is one reason I really wanted to have you on this podcast, because I so appreciate in your podcast the intentionality in talking about the spiritual aspect of working with psychedelics, again, in this time of the psychedelic renaissance, and talking about the healing of the chemistry of the brain, which is definitely something that's important to talk about, but also just bringing this conversation of the spiritual work, not just for ourselves personally, but as you mentioned, for our lineage and our future. As well.
Yeah, it's like, even when I was parenting my kids, I kind of remember so many moms saying, and I probably fell into this myself, like, oh, what do you do? And it's like, if you were a mom who is at home, you might be like, oh, I'm just a mom, And I think one of the things that's interesting is this reclaiming of self. And that the aspect of medicine that returns us to the truth of who we are, there's like no way but through that shadow. And, so many people talk about medicine as a reclaiming, a remembering of the deeper, truer nature of who they are. And it doesn't even matter what your spiritual orientation is. It can be, it's all energy. It's all love. It's all one. It can be a deep Christian mysticism. It doesn't matter. It can be whatever faith tradition you come from. It does begin, in my own experience, of peeling back the layers of traditional religion, but that's just been my own experience of, so what is spirituality? I think one of the other things medicine is amazing at is there is stages to awakening. We first have this awakening that maybe there is more than just the material world. Maybe I'm not just a body. And then after that, it's like, maybe there's something beyond me that I don't fully understand, that's a mystery. And maybe none of us will ever understand in this 3D reality everything. But medicine certainly invites us into the mystery of ourselves, beyond who we are, beyond what our perceptions of reality are, and what you're here possibly to do with your life. And I think for me, one of the things that it pointed to was there was some generational trauma even that actually came from a spiritual tradition. I had aunts that were sexually abused by a Christian order of men. And so when I was in my journeys seeing sexual trauma, it was like, what am I seeing? I knew very little of it at the time. And so one of the things that I think medicines are doing too is bringing us all back to truth and honesty. What is spirituality? Who gets to define it for you? What rules and dogmas are you following without even questioning? I think what medicine wants you to do is find the truth within yourself, beyond dogma, beyond what anybody else is telling you. It's within you. And the deep return to that mystery of who you truly are in relationship to medicine and this beautiful Mother Earth that we are on, that we are nature, that we actually co-evolved with these earth medicines. They are not separate from us, that they are amazing teachers if we allow them to be, if we, so it's interesting because I guess for me, it's still I'm still on this path. Right now I lean a little bit more towards some of the non-dual teachings. And I think that's where medicine has brought me. But I think everybody's on their own deep path. And I think that's kind of the beauty. And even bringing that into motherhood, right? I think I was raised to emulate and what I was raised to emulate, which was, the perfect mom, the perfect family, this is what they look like. This is what they have. This is where they go to school. This is how they show up in the world. And I think what medicine does is first bring that to you. Who are you? Who do you want to be in the world? But then you can hold space for others to then be who they get to be, versus parenting from a place of wanting your children to be anything but who they are. And I think that's a challenge. I think that can be a challenge. We all have this programming that we pass on. So I'm always telling people, like, do medicine work before you even have children, because you'll pass on all of your wounds, all of your conditioning unconsciously. And what medicines will help you do is help you choose who you are outside of your conditioning and allow you to parent from a place that is holding space for what wants to emerge in your children. And I can't say that that's what I did. I'm not like the perfect psychedelic mom. I think part of it is it's a paradox, right? It's like even putting psychedelics and motherhood together is a paradox. Psychedelic means soul revealing. And so one of the things that my goal is on my podcast is to have conversations about what reveals our truth. And then I've coined this other word, psychecliptic, which means soul concealing. And motherhood can be, as you said, motherhood itself is psychedelic. It's constantly revealing who we are, our triggers, where we're unhealed, what our conditioned thinking is. And life itself can be psychedelic. It's always asking us, are we in alignment to truth, or are we hiding the truth? And yeah.
Well, I think you're the perfect psychedelic mom, actually, in that you are so perfectly imperfect. Of course, as you mentioned,
Exactly.
The paradox. Like, so many things of what you just said. I mean, you're such a great storyteller, by the way. I really
thank you.
appreciate how you walk us through your experience. And the words you choose are so beautifully said. And as you were speaking, I was thinking of the Tao Te Ching and thinking of as you mentioned, after talking about shadow work and the medicine bringing up the shadow, how it also can have this great humor about it as well, kind of at the end, like a little like boom boom, like
Right?
haha, but it's
Right?
actually kind of fun. Yeah.
Right. It's like a joke.
Yeah, like it's really serious, but it's not like, but don't take it too seriously.
Right?
You know?
Yeah.
It's
And two things are coming up for me. The seriousness, which is, as a mother, you never want to do harm to your children. Every mother, including my own and beyond, who passed down generational ideologies and ideas that didn't serve me, literally were doing their best. It came from their culture. And so, like, I know this may sound like I'm a mom not willing to take responsibility for the wounds, but I am actually. I think one of the most beautiful things a mother can do is do any repair, or actually greater than repair is become the being that you hope your children become someday, become the person that you hope that they will come to at some point. And, that's a process. You're going to have times in your life where your kids may reject you. They might, it might be their time for individuation. And how do you deal with that? And so there's so many tricky things about motherhood. I mean, it is harder than any psychedelic you will do, because it is the longest journey you will ever take. It lasts a lifetime. That trip never ends.
Yeah.
And you're on it again on your own. It's your own internal process of learning. There's no microdose of motherhood. It is, it's a full-on journey. And then the other piece that you just talked about was kind of the cosmic joke and taking it all kind of lightly too. And having the grace and the wisdom to kind of at times know that we're all doing our best. Like you said, the perfect psychedelic mom, the perfect imperfect, is like embracing the mess, embracing the messiness of what life really looks like, especially as women who have been taught, like, you're supposed to keep it all together. Like, it's unrealistic. And the last journey that I had, and I don't do that much medicine really for myself anymore, but I did have a journey recently, and I'm just going to share it because it goes into the cosmic joke. And it was as if I was coming back again and again and again to Earth. And for the first multiple years, I was clueless as to the fact that I was even supposed to be here learning anything. I was just in this fog. And then finally, at some point in the journey, I was like, oh my God, I'm here again? Really? And it was like, well, you haven't learned anything. And I was like, oh, I'm here to learn something? And so some new awareness came at some point that I'm here to learn something. And that whole part of the journey was about deep compassion. And I saw and then I was like, great, okay. And then next thing I know, the same music started to play again in the journey, and I'm back again, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm here again. So there's definitely this desire not to be here again or something. And then I just saw a lot of the evils of the planet. And I was like, why does this have to be so? Why is there these two polarities of dark and light? And I saw this battlefield, and this man had a gun, and it was a war. And I was like, God, this is so awful. And then it showed me all the people that loved this man, his children, his wife, and how this man had so much more love in his life than what that glimpse of what I was seeing. But that so much of this, what's going on the planet is the inversion of truth. We have lost the truth of who we are, that we are deeply connected to each other.
Mhm.
And so then that life lesson was about that. And then I kept coming back, lesson after lesson, until finally there was this asking point of choosing the kind of like choosing truth. And I was like, but I have. And the journey was like, not really. And I was like, oh, okay. What am I missing? And it was almost as if, the cosmic joke is like that you are it in a way. That's kind of the cosmic joke, that it's like, oh, wait a second, I'm all of it.
Yeah.
Wait. So there was this moment of like, no, could you love and forgive yourself if you were the impulse of all evil?
Mhm.
So it was like asking me to see myself as the polarities, the dark and light, but not just part of it, like, oh, we're all part of it, as if you, just you, could you love yourself if you were the impulse to
Mhm.
all of it? And there was just this deep self-love of like, of course, it was just total ignorance, total lack of consciousness.
Mhm.
And then it was kind of like, what about the light? Obviously, we can all love ourselves as the light.
Mhm. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah, it's like, sure,
For some
I'll take
reason.
that role.
Yeah.
And then it was so interesting. All of a sudden, this bodhisattva showed up. And I was like, who are you? And it was like, well, it was the deep understanding that when you accept the dark and the light, in particular the light, because like you said, we're all willing to see ourselves as light beings and light carriers and healers, that it comes from a place of true humility, and that you're here then as the bodhisattva to help others as you continue to do your own work. That was such an interesting journey, because it was asking for all of it. It was showing the different lessons, asking for the humor, and also the deep mystery, again, that we don't understand why there's light and dark polarity here, and
Mhm.
our role in it, and the humility that it takes to realize that we are both.
Mhm. Yeah. It sure is fun trying to figure it out, though. For some reason, I keep
Yeah.
trying
Right?
every
Right?
day.
I'm like, am I coming back again? Did I learn
Yeah.
yet?
Yeah. I got it. I
I
got
got it this time.
it. Yeah. Wow. Oh my goodness. Yeah. So how is this, like, where you're at now? First off, I want to say thank you for doing the work of the podcast and showing up. And even before that, taking a leap and following your intuition to work with these medicines, and following that intuition to work with these medicine keepers, when it wasn't accepted or talked about at all, because it's hard to do that and come back and integrate that. So thank you for doing that, and for that leading you to where you are now, where you have this platform as a woman, as a mother who is very well spoken, and I'm so grateful for that. As I meet women and mothers every day through our work with Sanctuary, who are very afraid. They're very afraid to even work with the mushroom, let alone talk about it. They're afraid of the implications on how that will affect their career, how that will, they're afraid they'll be disowned from their family, or even worse, lose their kids, have their kids taken away from them for this sincere and intentional practice. So the more that we have women like yourself out there and speaking so intelligently about all of this and sharing your experiences with the world, the less that's going to be such a fear for all of us.
Yeah. And I hope so. And I also want to acknowledge too that, it's an important thing to acknowledge too that I'm a white woman who has, how can I say this? Let me just think this through before we put this in here. I don't know if I want this in, but you can decide. It's just like other populations have been at more risk. They are more policed, and in particular mothers, but also different, ethnic groups have been more at risk, and we're all at risk actually when our sovereignty is not upheld. We're all at risk when someone else is making our decisions to become conscious and how we choose to do that, how we choose to commune with nature and the deepest aspects of ourself. So for mothers that are out there that are doing this work, and fathers, because there are a lot of men showing up to do this work, that's so beautiful. You do have to be careful. You do have to be careful about where you go, your safety. We aren't in a place yet where it's totally legal. And one of the things I think it's really important to educate ourselves about in this space, and I don't think many people are talking about it, because we are like celebrating legality. We have to really understand what the current model of legality in the United States looks like. I hope that these medicines are legal. So I'm not anti-legalization of earth medicines and psychedelics. So I want to put that out there first. Decriminalization at this point keeps it in the hands of like anybody. Anybody can do medicine and feel safe. The legalization model in the United States right now looks a little bit more like a monopoly and a controlled way. For example, the legalization in Colorado, it's a little bit of a tangent, but I think it's an important issue for mothers, for us going forward in earth medicines to be educated about. The legalization in Colorado is legalizing 4 different earth medicines. And the reality is, can I go to Colorado and do MDMA or psilocybin when I want to? No, it's going to be very controlled. Who you can go to, whose medicine we're going to be purchasing. It's important to really get involved as mothers who want the next generation, our children, to actually have true access to earth medicines and psychedelics, to be able as families to have a church like yours to go to and feel safe to do so, to take medicine with our family because we want an initiation of some kind. We've had a loss in our family and we feel like maybe doing a mushroom ceremony together would be helpful and supportive for our families. That's not the model that is currently being rolled out in the United States. It's a beginning, but we don't want to lose sight of what we truly want, which is sovereignty over our bodies, over our families, and over our consciousness.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. Eric and I were arrested in 2015.
Oh, I just got the chills.
Pre-sanctuary, we had no protection. We were arrested as a result of an underground ceremony that went awry. And it was the scariest experience of my life, having no prior record or any kind of experience like that. I'd been I graduated with a bachelor's in health education. I was an active health coach. I was, very intentionally walking through my life, and then boom, that happened. And I find myself in jail with a felony conviction and, serving time. So that was the impetus in really starting, eventually the church in the United States after our Jamaica retreat venture.
Wow.
But fortunately, I was a white woman. Otherwise, it wouldn't have gone nearly as well for me as, if I wasn't a white woman. So I'm so grateful that you highlighted that privilege, and it is really important.
Yeah, and I
To
also want to highlight that there are a lot of incredibly brave women. Like
Mhm.
Tanya Mosley has a podcast called Truth Be Told that I want to highlight. The podcast is the intersection of psychedelics and Black culture.
Mhm.
And it's I binged listened to that episode because I was going to interview Tanya. And I think it's so important that we all amplify each other's voices and to understand the context of the psychedelic movement within each of our lineages and how it affects us individually. Like Tanya speaks about going to a retreat on the podcast, and she really wanted to heal some of her racial trauma. And now she's at a retreat in Jamaica, and all of the facilitators are white. It's so important that we all have equal access to these medicines. And even taking like the LGBTQ plus community,
Mhm.
psychedelics were used at a time because they believed that psychedelics could offer conversion therapy. So there's some wounding that needs them healing that has to take place within different communities where psychedelics were used in nefarious ways, in ways in trying to change who somebody was. And
Mhm.
the truth is, psychedelics can provide incredible amounts of healing for people that have trauma from gender identity. And
Mhm.
so, it's just important to have all of these conversations and voices be heard within the space. And, my hope continues to be on the podcast to have a wider range of voices come on. I've definitely had, Indigenous people come on and talk about how they feel about Colorado.
Mhm.
Um, but there's still so many voices that need to be heard in this space.
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. Thanks for mentioning Tanya's podcast. I haven't heard of that yet, so I'm eager to check that out.
Yeah. Another
Um,
psychedelic mom.
Awesome. Love that. Um, so tell us more before we wrap up this awesome conversation. I want to hear more about your work, and you have expanded your services out. You've taken your work from just being with yourself
Mhm.
to with others as well. Could you share a little bit more about that?
That is like one of the greatest gifts, honestly. It's very hard to describe, as when you're in deep role with medicine. It's like a dance of intuition. I'm following the medicine. I'm getting out of the way as much as I can. But you're going into the deeps with another human being. Most of my clients really are here to do like deep, deep work. And
Mhm.
so, um, yeah, I, it's so interesting because what I've seen again and again is the medicine always knows where to go. And there is a path to healing. One thing is for sure, that the shadow is something that we have to walk through, going back and reclaiming parts of ourselves. I look at it as if there's three, maybe four layers to the human being. First, it's in the body. There's this like contraction in the body. That journey that I had where it was showing me coming and learning different lessons. One of them was refining, actually, for me, the healing modality that I do, which was really fascinating. But it was showing me that, yes, the density of our traumas live in our body. There's these pockets of like dense energy that gets stuck, but our bodies are light. They're light. We're light beings. It's like a vibrational field of light. And so what medicine does so beautifully is it can identify where those densities are. It can identify the emotions that are stuck there, and then the core belief that is there. Like, so what I'm seeing is that we all have maybe 3 or 4 core wounds that are stored in our bodies that hold life, vital energy force when we don't heal them. And then we project from those wounds out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
So those can be anything from like unworthiness to deep feeling of like never going to have love, abandonment, a rejection wound. So there's these different wounds that we carry. And what medicine does is go right to that place. It can be layer and layer and layers. So this isn't one and done material. This is like layers. But what I do see is that medicine takes us to the place that the person is ready to go to. And that safety, like what I always say to anybody I work with, like everything is welcome here, everything. And begin when you start to say yes to the medicine, it's already starting to work. Nobody believes it until they say yes. And then they start to see the strange things that they remember that they had forgotten for years. But basically the medicine's going to take you where you need to go. Sometimes it's really uncomfortable, but it's such a place of freedom when you can identify in your body where something lives, let it go somatically. Somatics. So the different modalities that I work with is deep somatic inquiry. I work with a form of like resonant healing, which is really going into the place of the body. One of the things that I've like really playing with recently is my own journey. I really went into like all of it. I mean, the rage, the anger, the grief. It was like feeling things for the first time, like really into the deep shadows. And I'm playing a little bit lately with, do we actually have to, can healing be a little bit more gentle? Do we actually have to go back in, almost re-traumatize ourselves? Or is there like a more gentle way to do healing work? And what I'm finding, which is so exciting in the past like year, is we can use these medicines. We can even use gentler medicines, and I'm not trying to bypass people's shadow in the deep healing work that actually does happen. But I do think that there are some gentler ways that we can be healing. And it's the resonance of the body, the resonance of, our beings. It's almost as if we can take what I've noticed recently, and I'm curious whether you have as well. In the years that I've been doing this work, like it has felt like going into the deep sludge of trauma and shadow has been like necessary with medicine. In the past year, I don't know if there's been like some shift on the planet. I have no idea. But the very thing that someone would have needed medicine to go to, I would have needed the strongest medicine to go to because like of my construct. It's like right on the surface now with somatic inquiry. It's like, let's go into the body. Let's see what's there. And all of a sudden there's like a memory that may have needed medicine in the past for, doesn't necessarily need it today. So I think we can be a little bit more gentle about how we work with medicine. But ultimately, yes, I'm doing deep healing work with clients. It feels like reclaiming of child parts, reclaiming of someone's truth. So I do see a process, but ultimately that this process is coming to truth, finding the truth of who you truly are, letting the medicine teach you, learning how to self-heal. I think that's another really empowering thing. We talk about sovereignty in the medicine space, but I think ultimately what I'm working to do with my clients now is teaching them practices of self-healing, how to really do their own shadow work. After, doing it with me a few times, this is something that they can do anytime a trigger comes up. It's like, feel that trigger in your body. Just presence it in your body. Where are you feeling it? What's the feeling? It can be like heat in the face. It can be anxiety in your stomach. It can be tightness in the chest. It can be like, oh, you didn't like the way someone just spoke to you, or you're overwhelmed. Feel what the energy of that feels like. And you don't have to go into the energy of it as a 10, just like a 5. So you're aware of it. And then it's as if you have this dial. And if you've done earth medicines, this is a little bit more helpful, because I believe what medicines are doing is showing us a resonance, a vibrational field. So there's the resonance of the shadow, and you can feel it. It's a density. It's dark. Your body almost wants to like contract. And then it's like you have a dial, and you dial out into, if you have never done medicine, you could even think of something that just brings you joy and love. And you feel the vibration of that. Like, what brings you love, joy? Like, it can be so simple, like the smell of an orange. It can be like being by the ocean or someone you love. And then you dial your energetic field into that at a 10. And then you sit back. Some people call it sitting behind yourself or sitting with the ancestors. Allow technology. And it's like you sit back in this space with the trigger energy at a 4, this energy of pure radiant beingness, true nature, love. And that consciousness, that pure nature, that true nature knows exactly what to do in your body. It knows exactly how to heal without you getting in the way. And in the mind, it knows exactly how to heal that trauma out of your body and your body-mind complex. And so I'm doing a lot more of that with the medicine. So I'm still tweaking some things, but that has been so profound with clients. And I love serving the different medicines. Each one is different.
So, yeah, I love hearing about the somatic work, and I love how you're talking about this, like dialing with the dials and just kind of like, just kind of like mixing, encouraging this relationship to form between those memories. Yeah, I love that combined with the medicine work.
Yeah, and you just said the like the child work, right? I had a call yesterday and did somatic work with somebody who's new client. She closed her eyes, went right into a memory. She opened her eyes, was like, did I have medicine? I mean, we were on a Zoom call.
Yeah.
I was like, I didn't slip it through Zoom. And she was like, wow, that felt like a journey. So like deep somatic, walking someone through deep somatic work, you really can meet these child parts. And when you do, if this happens to you, if like you listen to this podcast or another podcast, and somehow like a child part is just like really closing your eyes, sensing what's in your body, going to where your body sounds the loudest. So it's like, I've got something in my belly. Just go there, welcome it, welcome it. It's all welcome. And then ask if there's a memory there, or there's something that it wants to show you. A child might show up. If that child shows up, it's just like letting that child know that you see it and that you want to hear everything that it wants to tell you. It's like if you can look at shadow work like a long lost child that just wants to come home into your arms and be seen. That's, I think, makes shadow work a lot less scary.
Yes. I love that so much. That was my most recent sacrament experience we had this big minister retreat and a big camping retreat. And yeah, that was my experience, which does seem to be getting lighter, which my initial mushroom experiences, the first 6 years, were just this, I'd really talk myself into it because I knew it was going to be so
hard,
grueling and hard. Yeah. And now, at least right now, at least the last couple of years, they've been like bringing up the shadow and seeing how awesome it is. Like, yes,
right.
There you are, my friend.
And, I say that, and I don't know, we both probably went through some major healing of something, right? Some shadowy thing that was hard, the darkness of it, the discomfort of it, the emotions of it. Maybe it's having gone through it once that you're like, I survived that. the shadow isn't as scary anymore. I don't know. So there's either some opening of consciousness, making it a little bit easier on all of us, or at some point just know that it does get easier. And shadow work actually ends up being like a treasure hunt. So it's like discomfort in the body. What part of me, what vital life force is stored there that I want for my creativity and my life. So it can be really playful after a while. And even like the child part that shows up, it's like, oh, what do you need? Yeah. So fascinating.
Yeah.
It's hard for people to understand how I explain it to clients that are like, I had a client recently who was like, I'm just here to have fun with friends. I'm not here for shadow work. And I was like, okay. It was a group ceremony. Okay. And inevitably a child part showed up. And again, it's just that deep knowing that I don't know, I think we don't want to admit that we were wounded. We don't want to say like, oh, I was hurt, because we want to bypass it and say like, no, everything was great. Everything was great. And I think it's okay to say ultimately that when you come into this dimension, there is going to be wounding. And we're just learning how to parent, actually. We're just beginning to understand parenting and trauma and a child's beingness. And I believe this work heals generational trauma and helps us become better human beings. And I think a lot of my clients are here for that very reason, whether they have young children or older in life and never had the chance to do this work. I think a lot of them are really interested in what's inside.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love how you talk about the conversation with the parts, like kind of that internal family systems type of model. We have some ministers that do weekly internal family systems calls that are open to the community. And it seems to be such an important part of working with the mushroom and just intentional work in general. Because I feel like that, for me, that's been my experience, that's the fear with acknowledging the uncomfortable stuff, is not having a context for knowing how to work with it. Just like, oh, if I admit it, then it's like, then what? Then what do I do?
And what does it mean about me? Am I then unlovable? Am I not perfect? Is it, am I blaming my parents in some way or society in some way? And I think we can take that all lightly, really lightly. Like, I don't think it is to go back and, everybody is doing their best from what they came from. As we are, it's like that Einstein quote, you can't fix a problem with the same level of consciousness that created the problem. And ultimately, earth medicines are here to raise our consciousness so we don't keep creating this world that we have today. And ultimately, it's one of my favorite quotes is Ram Dass's quote, we're all just walking each other home. I don't possess anything that anybody else out there doesn't possess. I'm not, I don't like the guru, the mentality or healer. Like I do, it's like I'm walking you home just because I've walked the path before. It's like, if you've walked the path, from the beach to your house or to school, home, it's like, the way. It doesn't mean there's one way. It just means that there are that having someone walk with you can be really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that your church is doing that, actually.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think they're, in my experience. Now, again, I do a combination. It's like an intuitive internal family systems with other modalities, but internal family systems is a real core to what I do. I don't know that there'd be as much healing psychedelic work without it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, communication is so important. to our community. I mean, it's really like our church is our community. It's the people, the church and the infrastructure that has been developed by the founders and the board, kind of like is there to set the container to be an open container of community and legal protection. But the church is the people, and these incredible people that keep showing up and offering these amazing things to our community continues to blow my mind. We have another therapist who is starting an 8-week series, again, open to the community. You don't have to be a member. It's a virtual series, and it's all about peaceful communication techniques and conflict resolution, which
Love that.
is so important.
Like a nonviolent communication or circling?
He does some nonviolent communication stuff, but I don't know a whole lot about it yet. But I'm eager to learn what his approach is.
I'm so excited about what you're doing. I think this is the next phase. You're really on the frontier of redefining medicine, spirituality, community. I think community is so important. Mm-hmm. I've seen, it's really fascinating. I've had recently a lot of like beautiful friend groups come because they want to deepen their connection with each other and they want to support each other in their own deep work. Mm-hmm. I've been fascinated by that.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's really great. You were mentioning Colorado, and we were somewhat involved. We know John Dennis, who did a lot of work advocating for entheogenic practitioners. And we kind of experienced a little bit of heartbreak there because we have some members, quite a few members in that area. And we were like, oh, wow.
Do you feel totally safe now? Like the way you're structured, do you feel safe?
I'm thinking about the question. I feel as safe as I could be as an active practitioner with the mushroom, which is a Schedule 1 substance, like you were pointing to earlier. Let's all remember, still the climate that we're in, we are constantly thinking and working to improve legal protection for our members, which it's a quickly changing climate. And there's a lot of questions, and there's new cases that are arising, every year. There's new churches that have had something come up where they find themselves in court and working through something, and we learn from that and we adjust what we're doing.
You're so brave, especially after what you experienced. I want to just pause. That takes a lot of courage as a mother.
Thank you.
And you two as a couple to feel so committed to serving others this medicine and to create a place where people can come and do it as safely as actually possible in the United States. Wow.
Thanks. I really appreciate that. It's so rewarding, and it's kind of selfish because I don't want to be arrested again. I don't.
Yeah.
That may happen, but at least, if it does, then we have a foundation to stand on, a really good one. And the stronger that we can, the easier we can prove our sincerity as a community and our safety, then the easier it will be for anyone in our community to get through any kind of legal situation. So it's kind of selfish. It's definitely for the greater good, but I want to be protected. I want my family to be protected, and I'm not going anywhere away from the mushroom. We're too close. We're family now. So I'm standing up for the mushroom too. And it's a mutual agreement that I'm pretty happy about. And my kids, I want my kids and their kids to have this community where they can practice and, not be afraid and not feel like they have to hide their practice.
Still a lot of destigmatizing that has to happen. It's amazing.
Oh yeah. Lots.
And it's interesting too, even with the psychedelic mom, people are like, oh, do you only interview moms? I'm like, no, see, that's the thing. I'm trying to break away from the paradigm of, yes, I am amplifying women's voices. I am amplifying mothers' voices. But the whole point is I'm a woman who has children with incredible curiosities, my own independence, my own life path. And so it's kind of interesting. And, it sounds like similar to you, like you're a mom, but you have this totally committed to your path and you're doing it as a family, which is so beautiful. But ultimately, you're this woman who has incredible courage, who's having incredibly courageous conversations on your own. And again, it's like redefining, I think, in a lot of ways, motherhood and being a woman, that we can challenge things when we don't like it, and define for ourselves what we want our families to look like and have the access to.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being a guest on this podcast and having this awesome conversation. I have so enjoyed this conversation. It's felt so natural for me, and it's really great to meet you. I hope that we have another conversation soon.
Definitely. I'll have to have you on and share what you're doing.
I would love that.
And share what it's like for you to be a mushroom mom. And I would love it.
Yeah. I've got some great stories to tell around motherhood and mushrooms.
Perfect.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And we'll link any relevant services and offerings that you have going on in the show notes.
Yeah, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.